Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to F2 Worlds, the channel where we talk all things Final Fantasy. This video is a continuation from last week's alternate timeline video, so if you haven't gotten a chance to see it, I will leave a link in the description, so be sure to watch that video before watching this one. I was happy with the response the video got in terms of likes and comments, so thank you for enjoying the video. Here is part 2 of the alternate timeline video of what if JECHT was never transported to SPIRA 10 years before the events of Final Fantasy X. We all know that JECHT being sent to SPIRA was the catalyst that set the motion of events that eventually led to Tidus going to SPIRA and helping Yuna and her guardians defeat Sin and deliver the Eternal Calm. But in this timeline, that never happens, meaning that Braska had to compose his party slightly different. In this timeline, his second guardian was replaced by a young Kimahri Ronso who was looking to train and become the strongest warrior of the mountain, but his small stature caused him to be a victim of bullying amongst his Ronso kin, especially Biran and Yenke. Kimahri accompanies Braska and Auron on their journey as Braska's second guardian and helps them ultimately defeat Sin, with Auron becoming the final Aeon for Braska and eventually the core of the current incarnation of Sin in this timeline of Final Fantasy X. And that is where part 1 ends, with part 2 starting where the original Final Fantasy X would have started, but with a few twists. Now in the original timeline, JECHT, as Sin, went to Zanarkand in hopes of getting his son to SPIRA to see life as he did, as well as find a way to defeat Sin and himself permanently. Tidus and Auron, along with the Guide of the Faith of Bahamut, avoided the wrath of Sin and were successfully transported to SPIRA where the event of the game would begin. In this timeline, Auron is the core of the current incarnation of Sin, and with no relationship to JECHT due to them never meeting in this timeline, has no reason to approach Zanarkand, but does know of its location because of Sin. In addition, Auron still holds the desire to find a way to defeat Sin permanently without the use of the final Aeon, knowing that the cycle would continue for as long as the ritual is used against Sin. And with him being the core of Sin for only 10 years, still held that hope that Sin can be defeated permanently, a call that is heard by one being, the Faith of Bahamut. One day, 10 years later, JECHT and Tidus are preparing for a blitzball game, with them having the same dynamic as in the original timeline, with JECHT constantly picking on Tidus and pushing him to be better by insulting him. As they go to prepare for their blitzball game, the Faith of Bahamut approaches both men. While it is unknown if JECHT can see the Faith of Bahamut, in this timeline JECHT will have that ability, and tells them to train more before the game. The two men follow the boy's advice and train at sea, with the Faith of Bahamut watching from the closest port. As they train, they come across a giant monstrous creature and are transported in a flash of bright light. When the duo lands in Besaid, they are confused as to where they are, and when a blitzball hits Tidus in the head, he still shows off his blitzball skills, with his father bragging that he can do better. Regardless, the blitzball players practicing on the beach are impressed by his skills, and Wakka still asks Tidus to join the Besaid Aurochs. This time, JECHT interferes, asking Wakka why he does not ask him instead, resulting in JECHT showing off his skills on their way to Besaid, which further impresses Wakka, and asks them both to join in the upcoming tournament, which they agree to. The events in the game continue as in the original timeline, except with JECHT and Tidus both accompanying the party, and Kimahri being much stronger due to training with Braska and Auron still fight Tidus, this time with JECHT. In this version, Kimahri wins as Tidus and JECHT have no fighting experience, unlike in the original timeline. However, instead of ignoring them and continuing his quiet ways, he instead offers to train them, as he was trained by Auron and Braska 10 years ago. Tidus is still given the Brotherhood sword, but JECHT, wanting to be better than his son, asks for a larger sword, and he is given a great sword kind of similar to the large sword he wields in the original timeline, and the party embark on their journey. When they reach Luca in time for the second blitzball game, both JECHT and Tidus, but mostly JECHT, declare their intention to win the cup, as they had previously encountered the Luca goers in Kilika, bragging that the Aurochs will not be able to win any games as they have failed previously. JECHT, sharing a similar attitude to the goers, talks back and claims that things will be different this time, and Tidus somewhat shares his father's opinion as they are on the same team. When Yuna is captured by the Albed as ransom for the Aurochs to hand the win to the Albed Sykes, JECHT tells Tidus that he will take care of the game along with Wakka, and Tidus should help out Yuna. While the rescue of Yuna goes the same as it is in the original timeline, the blitzball game ends up being a little bit different, as the combined offensive skills of both JECHT and Wakka results in a decisive Aurochs win, and the crowd, seemingly impressed with this new player in the Aurochs, cheer for his name and want to see more of him. When the Aurochs play the goers in the final round, while this is player determined, the timestamps of when substitutions are made are a little different. With Wakka being the captain, he wants to see what Tidus is made of, and the offensive duo of Wakka and Tidus start the first half of the game, since the injury to Wakka never happens due to help from JECHT. However, after the first half, the crowd immediately asks for JECHT to enter the game, forcing Tidus to be left out as JECHT re-enters the game. This angers Tidus even more as he hears the crowd cheering for his father over him. When the fiends attack Luca, Jet and Wakka fight off the fiends in the sphere, while Tidus aids Kimahri, Lulu, and Yuna in the fight against the fiends in the stands, and Seymour still saves the day by summoning Anima. When the party chooses to move forward, Jet decides to stay, with his love for the spotlight and the adoring fans convincing him that he should captain the Blitzball team. This decision relieves Wakka as he intends to retire regardless of the result, and Tidus is happy with this, as he no longer wants to see his father after what happened in the game against the Goers. So Jet becomes the new captain of the Aurochs, while Tidus and Wakka accompany Yuna as her new guardians. The events continue on from here, with Tidus constantly expressing his hatred for his father whenever he can. This results in Yuna forming a closer bond with Tidus after seeing how his father talks about him firsthand, as opposed to her learning about Tidus through Jet's stories from 10 years ago. The dynamic between the two main characters would be similar, if not closer. Whenever Sin makes an appearance, such as in Operation Mihen, it would not be Tidus, but instead Kimahri, who takes an interest in Sin, as Kimahri is the only one who has a connection to Auron as he is Sin, a fact that he hides from the rest of the party for now. When the party reaches the Moonflow, Yuna is still abducted by the Al-Bhed, and when Wakka and Tidus defeat it, come across Riku at the northern bank of the river. Riku still asks to join the party, which is eventually allowed by Yuna after getting permission from Kimahri, who carefully observes Riku and learns that she is Al-Bhed. The main difference is that the endorsement from Tidus in the original timeline is not there, as the two have never met, but the two quickly get along and have a friendship as they did in the original timeline. When the party reaches Guado Salam, Yuna and Seymour still meet, and a sphere of Dream Zanarkand is still shown, with Seymour asking Yuna for her hand in marriage, a decision that she still agrees to as in the original timeline. The events of the game would continue as similar, with Yuna eventually learning of Seymour's murder of Jiskel and her marriage to him as part of her plan to get himself to turn in, leading to the ultimate confrontation in Macalania Temple, with the party killing Seymour and escaping the Guado. The events at Bikanal Island and Revel mirror the events in the original timeline. When the party reaches the Calmlands, the party learns that Jet had been dismissed from the Besaid Aurochs due to his constant drinking and causing trouble around Luca, resulting in Wakka and Tidus returning to become captains of the Blitzball team, but unsure of Jet's whereabouts. When the party reaches Mount Gagazet, the ultimate showdown between Kimahri, Biran, and Yenke still happens, but a stronger version of each of the Ronso, with Biran still angry that Kimahri was chosen to be the guardian of High Summoner Braska 10 years ago and causes him to get revenge on Kimahri and prove that he is stronger between the two. Like in the original timeline, Kimahri is victorious and he is allowed passage along with the party. However, when the party reaches the peak, they are stopped by Seymour and, to their surprise, Jet, who has sided with Seymour as the latter had convinced Jet that he can help him find his son as long as he accompanies him, a deal that Jet agrees to. When Seymour approaches the Ronso who stop him and start to attack, Jet is initially reluctant, but after Seymour tells him that the Ronso are stopping him from getting to his son, Jet agrees and kills the Ronso along with Seymour, an act that he feels really guilty performing. Upon seeing Tidus, Jet is excited to see his son, but after Seymour boldly claims that he attacked the Ronso along with Jet, Tidus is enraged, attacking his father. This leads to a showdown between Seymour Flux, with help from Jet, and the party. The party wins the fight, and Seymour is banished. As Tidus is about to finish Jet, he suddenly stops, not being able to take down his own father. Jet apologizes for his actions, not knowing what to do after being removed from the team and being manipulated by Seymour to perform gruesome actions and promises to be better, and expresses his love for his son and is proud of his growth during the pilgrimage. After some time, Tidus eventually forgives his father and the two make amends, and Jet joins the group as their final guardian as they approach the Zanarkand ruins. The events between here and the rest of the game go similar to the original timeline, with Kimahri eventually revealing to the party that Auron is the current incarnation of Sin and that his final wish was to find a way to defeat Sin permanently, and that the final Aeon would just continue the cycle of destruction as Sin is reborn. Jet and Tidus, along with Riku, insist that they can find a way to defeat Sin without the use of the final summoning, with Yuna being inspired by their encouragement that she refuses to do the ritual, which still leads to the fight with Yunalesca, and the party defeat her in battle. When the party finally fights Auron inside of Sin, he expresses his happiness for the party's achievements up to this point and formally introduces himself as the other guardian to High Summoner Braska, and is happy that the party is one step closer to fulfilling his wish of defeating Sin permanently, but that they must go through him in order to reach Yu Yevon. He then looks to Kimahri and says that he has grown and learned well, and in turn has trained Tidus and Jet to be capable fighters in their own right, but the party is tested when they fight Auron, the final Aeon of Braska, and is eventually defeated by the party, leaving Yu Yevon vulnerable. When the party finally defeats Yu Yevon and Sin permanently, Jet and Tidus disappear. As the Faith no longer dream and being a summoning of the Faith, they vanish, but not before jumping off the airship and proceeding to the far plane. much to the sadness of the party, especially Yuna, who expresses her love for Tidus. And that concludes what would happen in the events of Final Fantasy X if Jet was never transported to Spira 10 years ago. There are a lot of events that could have happened and the dynamic of many of the characters would have changed. This was a difficult timeline to create as there were a lot of factors to consider, and there are details that I may have missed. If I did, be sure to leave them in the comment section below and let me know what you think of the video overall. Next week, I will have another poll with 2 more alternate timeline topics that you will have the opportunity to vote on which topic you want to see next. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Final Fantasy content. And other than that, this is Enzo signing out, and that, as they say,